What's good? What's good, kings and queens? Welcome back. Another episode of Stand Up. I'm your boy, Danny Royce, and I'm joined by my co-host.
What's up, y'all? It's Michael again with the same shirt 2 weeks in a row, and it's okay.
It's okay because it's Sade.
Oh, yeah, it's Sade.
Yeah.
Sweetest taboo. But speaking about the sweetest taboo, we got a fellow Brooklynite over here.
What's good? Yes, an extraordinary, multi-hyphenate, because we're going to get into all that. It's Justinah McFadden. What's good?
What's good? Hi, everyone.
Oh,
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, of course, man. We've known each other for quite some time now.
Yeah, we have.
And every time I see you, it's always like we just catching up.
Always
right back
catching
where we left off.
Yep.
And then that smile is just there's something bright
Yeah.
about that smile. It's like it's good spirit, good energy. So thank you so much for being here. I want to talk about this, your journey of writing. What started your journey of writing? Because you got quite a few things published already.
Yeah,
working on some things as well. So talk about that.
Yeah, I knew I was going to be a writer since I was 8. I never wanted to really do anything else. So kind of grew up really poor in a kind of a rough neighborhood. So I just kind of went into my characters and a creative flow at a young age. And it just kind of kept me out the streets. I think I was 17 when I got my first poem published in an American anthology. And I won like $1,000 for a sentence. So I was like, literally, the poem was like
Nice.
one sentence. And I was like, oh, okay, I think I have something here. I think I can make money from writing. But, and I just stuck with it and published author of 8 books. And
8 books. So
Yeah.
what's your favorite one out of those 8, though? Do you have a favorite or
I do.
something that has a memory? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I have 2 of them. Motivational book called Life is a Lobster. So I wrote that book back in 2013. I published it in 2014, I think. It made it on NBC and CNN. The reason I like that book is because I correlate lobster to being something really expensive, right? But it's at the bottom of the ocean, so it's really, really difficult to get. And I think that's how God feels about us, right? When we're at our lowest, He will grab us out of that addiction, out of that alcoholism, out of that situation, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how God feels about us.
Right.
So to piggyback why that thought came to my mind, I was in London in 2009 at a poetry convention, and I was like, yo, this is ill. I never want to leave London. I love Europe. I was like, wow, life is great. Life is like a lobster. And then I stuck with that title, and it never left me. And I used to be a police officer in my early 20s in New York City.
New York, NYPD. Man. Yeah.
And one of the things I would always ask, I have a strong relationship with God, and I would ask Him, like, I don't understand why people will want to mess up their life. Why would you want to be arrested? Why would you want to have certain social conditions? And obviously there's other politics we can get into, but that's when it ministered to me that people don't know they have a purpose. They don't know that Jesus died for them. And when you don't have a purpose, when you don't have direction, you are just going about life with no compass, if you will. So there's no direction, there's no focus, so your choices are different. So that's where Life is a Lobster kind of came into,
nice.
And it's helped a lot of people find their purpose.
Nice.
And that's the goal.
That is the goal. I mean, it makes sense because people you don't get into a car just to expect to show up where you're going to show up. You put it in the GPS, right?
Yeah.
So it goes in the same way. But also, your other book, you said Life is a Lobster.
Yeah.
What was the other one called?
The 13th Day. That's a novel.
13-day novel.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that, because I love that work. I read the book, and the story is incredible.
Yeah, thank you. It's based on a true story, actually, surrounding a conspiracy that happened in World War II of the 364th Infantry, where over 1,000 African-American men were slaughtered on American soil in Mississippi. So this happened and occurred in Jim Crow South. So it's these stories that you learn in high school and you learn, as a kid, but then there's other stories that are so buried and hidden from a lot of atrocities that happen. And just last week, I was at the premiere of Till. And it really touched me, that story.
Yes.
And it just shows that something can happen in 1955 and God can bring it, bam, to 2022. And it's the same with this story. There's only 2 writers in America that wrote about it. A gentleman named Carol Case, who's a white person, an older guy in his 70s, and me, Justinah McFadden. But he was a banker, Carol Case, back in the 50s in the South. And he was safe, his skin color, and his gender as well. So a good old boy, let's say, that came up to him in a bank and was like, yeah, we got rid of those N-words. We really showed them And he was like, well, you saying it really happened? And the guy was like, yeah. So Carol Case began researching this conspiracy for like over a decade of his life. He had death threats, and he still released a book called American Atrocity. And I was a police officer, and I couldn't sleep a lot in the middle of the night. I was also in the Army before that, so you don't sleep a lot when you're a soldier. You're trained. And I'm up one day, and I'm chilling, and I put on the History Channel because I love to learn. And I saw this story of the 364th Infantry, and I just grabbed my pen and paper middle of the night, started researching, went to the Library of Congress, and I saw it. If you look at the newspapers from 1943, there was not one black soldier in any of the newspapers. So you can get rid of a lot in history, but you can't change newspapers.
Right.
Once it's published,
that's it.
it's published. And if it's in the Library of Congress, it happened. So through my research, I found that the story was true. And I was like, well, how can I bring this to light and tell this story in the proper way? So I created characters out of it, Lola and Hanson. And Lola brings the tragic story of Hanson, who represent all black men in that time, whose stories were untold. And it's in post-production right now and just trying to get the funding for it to bring it to theater. And it's not about Oscars, and it's not about any of that. It's about 1,200 soldiers in the United States Army that were murdered on American soil. But they were fighting for the rights of this country and a democracy, but then they had another fight. Right? You're fighting against a country who's fighting against you. So let me see. I think about 7 years ago, I had Hal Lieberman, the former president of Warner Brothers, with the book. And there's been like different people that had the book in their hand, and it's going around. And I just kind of just fell back off it. I just kind of stopped pushing. And when I stopped pushing, now things just come to me. I don't even have to ask for it. I didn't ask to go to the Till premiere. It was offered. I didn't ask to be here. It was offered. I just pray. And I'm literally leaving this story in God's hand. But I know, like, great stories take time to be told.
They
like
do.
Till, it took over 14 years to get made. Forrest Gump took 14 years to be made. So it doesn't scare me. So when I went to LA Film School, they told us that, hey, it takes about 10 years for a film to get made. And I would say, all right, cool.
Okay, we just gonna make it.
But yeah, but that's the story. But that one is really near and dear to my heart. I have a lot of scripts, a lot of stories, but that one I will never give up on. Ever.
When you talk about Till, ever, and you shouldn't, because it's amazing. But yeah, when you talk about Till, you know, because he was from Chicago, and so that time, it was like right before my dad was born, but his brother, you know, would go back and forth as well to visit, you know, family. And so my grandmother would be like, after that happened, like nobody went down there to visit their family, you know what I mean, for like years. And so it's just, it's a story. If you haven't seen that movie, go see it. I mean, it's hard to watch, but it needs to be watched.
That investigative journey that you took, that reminds me of Zora Neale Hurston's book.
Oh, yes.
The name is skipping. Do you remember?
Is it Their Eyes Were Watching God?
No, it was about the last slave ship that came in the South. I can't remember the name right now, but I remember reading that book, and I was like, really? In the 40s? Like, and his story, and just, you know, her interviewing him, and I was like, this seems like a film on its own, but the fact that this happened in the 40s, it was like, that's not too long ago.
Not at all.
At all.
Not even 100 years ago.
100 years.
And it kills me that people will say, well, what about this and what about that? And it's all these question marks, like a black tragedy of 1,000 to 1,200 African-American soldiers could not happen in this soil. Let's be real. We're just going to call a thing that these atrocities have happened to us as a people. And it's not so much because they were black. It's because their lives didn't matter in a country that they were serving. And it's because this story was just, I mean, you have no idea what people went through to make sure that this story doesn't get out. Because it was that egregious. You didn't just kill one person. Emmett Till was one, and look at the impact. We're talking about thousands.
And I want to know, like, there's stories out there that are buried, you know?
100%.
That are similar. So it's crazy, but I want to talk about what you started, your walk with God, and what led you to Just People Ministries, because I think you're doing some amazing stuff out there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I actually, believe it or not, I was born and raised a Muslim.
Really?
That's something I didn't know.
I knew, didn't I? Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, and I converted to Christianity at 23.
Okay.
Yeah, so I kind of always knew around something that happened in 1988, something about 8 years old.
Okay.
I knew I would be a writer, and I was like, I don't think I'm a Muslim. I couldn't say it out loud, but I was like, I don't feel it. My spirit was rejecting things.
Oh, wow.
And it was something I was searching for. And when I was in college, I would always see people happy. And I'm like thinking in my mind, like, you know how people from Brooklyn are, but like, yo, but are you really happy?
Yeah.
Like, for real? Are you really smiling? And one of my friends who was in police academy with me, I met her like when I was 7 years old in Brownsville. And she was like, yo, come to church with me. And I was like, okay. She didn't have any prerequisites, so I was like, all right, whatever, I'll go. So I went, and the pastor was just talking, and my spirit was just like, bam. And I was like, that's it. That's what I've been looking for. That is it. It's joy. That was it. It's peace. And I just literally was like hooked. It was like Jesus was like a drug after that. And I just couldn't let go of anything else. So that was at 23. And
okay.
I just kind of never looked back. Back in 2013, when I went to Africa, to visit my two brothers there in West Africa and to see Gorby Allen and do some more research for another book I'm going to write in the future. I was like, the stars were ministering to me, and I just felt in my spirit that I was supposed to be a minister of the word. And my publicist at the time told me that, and I would laugh. I would say, I don't think I can be a minister because I still curse.
Right.
I still lose my temper, and I like a margarita or two. I don't think that's for me. You know, I love people. I want to help people. I love, you know, the homeless community. But I was asking God and kind of bargaining with my gift. It's like, well, can I just feed people?
Right.
Like your word says to feed people. I can feed the poor, but I don't want to be a pastor, because I thought in my mind, right? That's why the Bible says to trust God with all your heart in Proverbs 3:5, but lean not on your own understanding. Because in my level of understanding, I was like, I have to be perfect, and I'm not going to be perfect.
Right.
And I finally just kind of gave in 2017, and that's when Just People Ministry came to me. Because even as a police officer, 9 out of 10, just to keep it real, most of the people you arrest, they don't need to be arrested. Right. They need social services. Right. They need help. They need addiction relief. They need counseling. They need a church. They need a community. Right. And I would say that, but I'm like a little ant, a big farm. Exactly. So when I finally launched it, I thought it would be in New York, but it was told to me to come back to LA. And when I came back, the pandemic happened. I was like, launch a ministry in the middle of a pandemic. Right. And I did it. And I did it with not first time in my life laid off, first time in my life I didn't have a job. And I just listened, and we fed over 10,000 homeless people on Skid Row in the surrounding areas since the pandemic started. And we've also probably led a little bit over 2,000 to Christ, me and my team.
Wow. Hey, let's go.
That's a blessing. I'm not sure if have you been to CCC? In Brooklyn Christian Culture Center?
8 years. That was my pastor. Pastor A.R. Bernard.
Yep. Yeah, 8 years. He started out as a Muslim as well.
Yep, he sure did. That's why I correlated with him. He started out in the Nation of Islam. Yep.
Right. And the one thing that I'm not Christian anymore. My dad, but that church always called him my pastor, because what I appreciated about him is, one, what he did for the community, especially Starlight City, Pathmark, that whole area, but also the life applications in which he preached. He was so poised. Change is the only constant in life. Yep. Grace and what is the call? Grace and peace. Grace and peace and
Christ and culture. And,
right, and I really love that. And I feel that from you with your ministry.
Oh, well, thank you.
And how you're doing that worldwide.
Yeah, because I was gonna name it Just People Ministry, but then it was taken, and I was like, oh man, you know, I'm like a kid with God. That's literally how I'm speaking to you. That's how I speak to the Lord. And when I looked at another thing and it said Just People Ministries Global Outreach, the Lord said, you're gonna go global with this, and I was like, ooh, I'm scared. What about this? What about that? And you're right, and that's really what it's about. Like, I was telling God, like, I don't want to do church as usual. Like, if I'm a preacher of word, like, I want to go to the hood. I want to go to Skid Row. I want to go to the people and tell them that there's a God that died for you. Like, you matter. You have a purpose. And it really doesn't make a difference when you go up to somebody who's strung out on crack and say, hey, what's your name? They forget they have a name. Yeah. That means someone named you. You had a purpose. You were born.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
And we serve them with only gold and silver spoons, intentionally.
Right, intentionally.
It's a shock value. And they go, wow, a spoon? And I say, yeah, because you still matter. You matter to God. Your life matters. Right. Just because you're in this 10-year span or 5-year span of addiction doesn't mean that your purpose is gone.
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
No, I love that. And you know I love that. But so I want to talk about, it's not the current event topic, but Karen Bass, you familiar? LA mayor.
Yep,
So
just recently elected. She's
right.
going against the billionaire.
Exactly. So one of her key things is to help the homelessness in LA, which is a huge feat, obviously. There have been strides in the past, but not consistent. How do you feel about her campaign and everything she stands for? I don't know if you've watched any of her speaking or whatever.
Well, I'll say this, right? It's a small
keep it
world.
real.
So this year I met the governor of the state of California. And I'm not going to shut up about the condition on Skid Row.
Right.
I'm not going to shut up that some of those people down here are veterans that have served this country.
Yeah.
The other gentleman, I will say this, that was running against her, that is the billionaire.
Yeah.
I'll just say I went to another billionaire who has little houses.
Right.
And I just know for a fact that guy who was running against her, he 100% already had 3 of those little houses from the other billionaire.
Right.
To get rid of the 11,000 tents surrounding Skid Row, which is a condition, if you will.
Right.
I don't know if she did, but I know some other attorneys that backed her up who I know personally. So if they said she's not just politician as usual, and she's not just talking as usual, because even the governor of California, he can hear me, and he can see how passionate I was about it, and he actually listened.
Right.
And I have an idea that you can take these 11,000 people and really give them social justice, if you will, and take them from the street. Now, can I just be real and just say it?
Yeah.
Do I feel like if 90% of the people on Skid Row were not people of color, that it wouldn't be like that?
Oh, yeah.
Do I think that it would happen a lot faster? Yes. But I will say that he was trying to do that. And he had the money to do it.
Yeah.
But God had a different plan. So she's in office, and I pray to God that she does what she says that she's going to do.
Yeah.
And I would love to
Likewise.
partner with her and help with that in any way I can, spiritually as well as legally.
Right. Bad.
Dave Chappelle actually mentioned that once white people, the opioid crisis. In the 80s, the crack epidemic. Now it's the opioid crisis. And now everyone wants to pay attention all of a sudden. Because, the skin color of the drug changed.
Right. It's affecting everyone now.
Right.
So it's like, oh, okay. Once it affects
Now it matters.
now it matters. When it affects your homeland, now it matters. But, okay, so you talked about legally as well. I want to talk about your law mediator before we go on into current events. Your law mediation. So tell us one of your, let me see. I want to know the nitty gritty, something I haven't even heard of, something that their memory of being a police officer, and what made you end up to right now being mediating.
As a mediator,
So like, when you're like 7 years old and you're like, I'm going to be a fireman, or you're like, Spider-Man, cops and robbers. And then you go up and you watch these shows like Law and Order, and you're like, yo, this is lit. And you see all these great movies for like Denzel and Training Day, and then you're in 2001 and you see 2 planes crash into a building, and you see 3,000 people die in one day, and people jumping out of windows. And I joined the Army 2 months after 9/11, and my life just kind of went differently than I thought it would in some ways. But then when I finally got in academy, January of 2004, when I became a cop, it was just different than what my 7-year-old mind had thought. And my first day on patrol out of academy, I just said, oh, I'm not doing this 20 years.
Yeah.
Because it was more like, I prerequisite, because some people say be real, and then when you're real, they're like, even black folks, believe it or not.
True.
So my first day on real is the real. That's right. Now
Okay,
stand up.
know.
Now fight the power. No, but like,
shout out to my boy.
But like my first day, I'll never forget, in police academy, I get out and we're in the hood. We're in East New York. I grew up in Bed-Stuy, and I'm from the project, so it's nothing.
Right.
From the projects by way of heaven, but I'm from the project. And the white sergeant, he's like, come back with bodies.
Oh, wow.
On everything I love. Come back with tickets. And I said, well, what do you mean? Like, if I see something, do something, no doubt. No, come back with bodies. So it reminded me it's a social condition, a mental condition from day one. Come back with bodies. These are the bad guys, the black guys. I'm in the studio with like 4 or 5 black guys right now. So you're conditioned to that. And then I would peep game first 2 years as a cop, still in my early 20s, wet behind the ears. When we went into white neighborhoods, right? In neighborhoods that were not of color, like the Williamsburg, you know, once you pass Marcy PJs, it was more like, take it easy.
Wow.
Just have a good day. It wasn't come back with bodies.
Right.
I need bodies. Wow. And they put these pressures, well, a lot of people don't see, they put these pressures, I'm telling you, internal pressures on cops.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I'm a great saleswoman because I said, wow, I didn't realize all these years I was doing sales. Because it's quotas.
Yeah, that's pretty,
It's quotas. And I'm like, you give somebody a $165 ticket in the hood, and you can take food literally out their kid's mouth.
Right.
So I came to LA because I got accepted into LA Film School, which is not too far from here on Hollywood and Vine, and met Hal Lieberman, the former CEO of Warner Brothers. And I was like, yo, I'm going to come here. I'm going to be in your department. I'm going to do business entertainment. That's what I want to do. And then I got accepted into law school the same year. So I was like, what do I do? And God was like, do both. I was like, okay.
Okay.
So I came out here and I did that and finishing up law school now. And I had a case. It was something I went through spiritually and it turned legally. And there was a mediator there because there's 3 levels to get to litigation. But you want to avoid litigation because it's expensive and it clogs up our legal system.
Right.
So it's mediation, then arbitration, then litigation. And I didn't feel like the mediator was on my side. I didn't feel like she was fighting for me. I felt like she was weak.
Oh, wow.
And I was pissed.
Right.
Because I went to law school too. I'm like, speak up.
Right, yeah.
Because it was a civil rights case.
Okay.
And I had I's dotted, T's crossed. And I just felt like she didn't have my back. And in that moment, I said to myself, I have to speak for people that really need help. And that's what made me become a law mediator.
Nice. Speak for them that don't have a voice. That's dope. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, transitioning to our current event.
Yeah. Sorry, that was mediator.
I know.
I've never heard of that before at all. I feel like that's something that's not really promoted. And that sparked a new train of thought in my mind. But mediation is obviously key to ministering, especially going to the skid rows and meeting the people in the projects and stuff. It's like they come or ministers and there's this expectation that it's like, oh, you about to preach me about God. And then some people like yourself, as a mediator, you know how to talk that language. Yeah. And for instance, Leandria Johnson, love her, and I love her testimony, and that she's not afraid to show who she is, and she shows up, and that's what connects her to many of the youth of today. Now, speaking about today, there is a somewhat of a decrease in black folk, young black folk, going to church because of the traditional systems and stuff, and it's not quote unquote modernized. That's why Leandria is one who really speaks to that. So what is your take on that, especially with your global outreach ministry and having the black youth come back to the church and really grow with God?
That's a great question. I think that there's been, I would say, a lot of maybe hurt in the church or distrust, if you will. But truly, what it's about, it's not even about me. I think the reason why I'm able to, whether I'm on a phone call, a business call, I can lead someone to Christ, because I don't make it about me, because it's not about me.
Right.
Someone told me one day, he said, I want to kill myself. I said, well, why would you feel that way? Who's telling you? What voice are you hearing? He said, well, I'm gay. And I said, okay, so why do you have to kill yourself because of that? And he said, the world doesn't accept me. My parents don't accept me. On Skid Row, another girl told me that her parents kicked her out the house at 16 because she's attracted to the same sex. And I said, that's a shame that they did that. And now she's been on drugs, on Skid Row for 9 years. So my point is this: if you would just listen to people, and don't make it about you. It's really about Jesus and winning souls. Like, what I love about the church and my spiritual leader, Prophet Lovi Elias, if you go to a church like Revelation, you really will feel accepted. Because it's not about anything. He really just wants people to be delivered and and fully walk into their fullness of Christ.
Right.
And really the goal of Just People Ministries, why it's called Just People Ministries, is because people are just that. We're just people called by a just God for a just cause. So I feel like what will bring the Black community or everyone back to Christ in general, if people will make it just about that, about Jesus, not about their self. There is no agenda when I go to Skid Row other than to feed the people and free the people. It says in Matthew 10, if you see someone thirsty, give them a cup of water. So I say all that to say that it's not really about going to a church as a body. It's about knowing why you were born and knowing your purpose, right? Because really you're just existing if you don't. And it would be a tragedy to get to the end of your life and die having fulfilled your purpose. So, and especially in the Black community, keep it real. It's been a lot of hurt. It's been a lot of mistrust, and even in the church. And I think that's what keep people away. But you can't do this life alone. Jesus didn't die for religion. He died so we can have freedom in him, and he died to give us relationship. And I think we have to get back to that as a whole and as a body. So,
quick side note. So you grew up Muslim.
Yep.
How was that transition? I'm assuming your mom or parents, what was that little bickering back and forth?
I think my parents liked me better as a Christian, honestly, because I was tough growing up. You know, I don't know. It's my journey. My mommy's in the studio. So it's my journey, and I just feel my spirit. It's just something about Jesus and someone dying for me that makes me want to just go hard and go for my purpose. And I wake up every day with vision and purpose, and I'm pumped. And God can trust me with wealth. He can trust me with what he's going to give me, because it's not for me. I'm going to give it back to others. I'm going to do something great with my life.
Right.
And with this purpose. And, you know, there were things I learned from Islam that I still carry. Like, I don't dress a certain way. I don't speak a certain way. I don't carry myself a certain way, because it's just how I was raised.
Right.
You know, covered head to toe, literally. Like, be quiet, you know, be a woman, be soft, be gentle, don't try to be seen, that kind of thing.
Be gentle, Justinah? Come on. No.
Real, don't worry about
I'm like, come on now, let's be real.
I'm gentle-ish.
No, it is. Right. This is our Did You Know segment, okay?
Okay.
So I just want to, being in-law and all that, this is great, perfect, right up your alley. So did you know whites once really voted to send us back to Africa? It's a real thing. And it was 1922. Our people were trying our best to obviously build wealth, stay off white terrorism, fight off everything, equal rights, all that stuff, right? And white people obsessed with us, obviously, as always, voted to do something so ridiculous, right? Black leaders could only respond in one way, and that was to laugh. So in the 1920s, during Jim Crow and all that, they voted to send them back to Africa, to send black people back to Africa. Yeah. Back then, European countries owed the United States money for World War I. So white people in Mississippi, fed up of us demanding our rights, petitioned to the federal government to make a move that the thought would solve the nation's race problem and its debt problem. So Europe would pay us back with land they colonized in Africa instead of money. And then the U.S. could ship black people over there, and that was it. That was the solve. Wow. That was the solution to that problem back then. So voters easily passed the proposal, but there was a problem. Nobody consulted blacks, obviously, in Mississippi. So the news got around. Everyone just laughed it off and called it stupid. So it reached as far as the Supreme Court. Can you believe that? But it was dropped, obviously. And there's a lot of, back to Africa, people that came before us that really pushed that. Marcus Garvey being one of them, So it's back to Africa on our terms, you know what I mean? And let's be real, our people were here before that. So if you want to be real. So I just thought that was interesting to share, because that's crazy. That's
after 400 years of slavery. Okay, go back.
Thanks. Thanks. No thanks. All right.
Strip the royalty, go back.
That's it. That's crazy. But I want okay, so we're wrapping it up right now, but I'm gonna skip our trivia, right? Because I want a beautiful, powerful black woman, right? And I want you to share with our listeners just a ripple of motivation, inspiration that they can take with them. You know, it's been a hard year. It's been a hard few years.
Oh, yeah.
You know, death is on the toe. So share a little something with us, and that'll see us out. Appreciate that.
I would say, in terms of inspiration, I think you're always not going to feel it. You're not going to always feel like getting out of bed. You're not always going to feel motivated. But that's why you have to know your why. And you have to know why you're doing what you're doing, why you're going for your dream. If you're not from LA, why did you come here? If you're writing a book, but why are you writing it? Like, you have to kind of look outside yourself, I would say, with any and everything. Like, you're not always going to feel like going to the gym if you're an athlete. You know, do I feel like from 4 a.m. to probably about 8 p.m. every day, I just listen to problems all day, whether it's with my insurance company, whether it's with the law mediator, and whether it is as a pastor. And it could be a lot sometimes and pretty heavy, but you got to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And then ask God, why am I called to do this, right? But I think that leading back to the word purpose again, if you have something bigger than yourself to look forward to, then you're always looking forward, right? And that would be my thing, is to what's holding you back from being your best self. Are you looking back? Are you looking forward? Right? Because in the book of Jeremiah, it says that you have a future and God has a hope for you, right? So if you look forward, that means you have a hope. You have something tangible to hold on to. So I would say don't trust what it looks like. Don't trust your surroundings. Don't trust even what your bank account looks like. You got to just trust God.
Hey.
I'm not going
bottom
back.
line.
I'm not going back. That's right.
I'm moving ahead. All things declared to you. My past is over, and in you.
That's
Come
it.
on.
Things are
Let's
made
go.
new. I surrender my life to Christ. I'm moving forward.
Forward, and forward. And that's just it. You just got to keep moving forward. We got to move forward as a nation. We got to move forward as a people.
Amen to that.
Right? And that's just it.
Let's do all that we can to move forward. And leave what's in the past in the past. It's so important. But thank you so much for joining us. Go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you and check out all your work.
You can find me on Instagram under Justinah with an H, Mac, M-A-C, and justpeopleministries.org. We're doing great things. Looking to feed thousands again next year and lead thousands to Christ through the Word of God. And thelawmediator.com if you need any mediation.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And also on Just Ministries, you can also find out where to donate and help out and all that stuff as well, right? Okay, perfect. So make sure we'll drop that down. Awesome. And Big Mike, go ahead and see us out. Where to find you?
You are amazing.
Thank you. You're amazing too.
Seriously, I was just absorbing everything that you were saying, absorbing your energy, your mom's energy. The moment I walked in the room, like I can just, it's spread love is the Brooklyn way. That's all I'm gonna say.
That's it.
Spread love is the Brooklyn way. But yes, it's a pleasure. You can find me at life.with.mike on Instagram and working on Twitter soon. And yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm very proud to call you my friend as well. You're amazing. Thank you so much again for joining us. And you can find me everywhere at I Am Danny Royce. Also, check out the podcast at Stand Up Podcast. We'll see you next time. Be blessed.